The Lady in the Palazzo, at Home in Umbria, by Marlena de Blasi. Narrated by Laural Merlington. Copyright 2007 by Marlena de Blasi. This unabridged audiobook is published by arrangement with Algonquin Books, a division of Workman Publishing, and was produced in the year 2007 by Tantor Media Incorporated, which holds the copyright thereto. To access the recipes from the feast, insert the last disc of this program in your computer, or go to www.tantor.com, keyword Palazzo. Part 1. The Next House. Chapter 1. A Life Lived Well Moves Backward. The sausages had been roasted in the baker's oven earlier in the day. Now, plumped and crisp and still in their shallow metal pans, they warm over the embers of a charcoal burner, the scent of them rousing hunger and perfuming the piazza. Nearby, on another table, there sits a large kettle over a gas burner filled with what must be gallons and gallons of local red wine. Whole oranges pricked with cloves float about in the purply depths of it, and a woman in a fur hat with a cardigan over her pinafore stands on a step-ladder and stirs the wine with a long wooden spoon. Nearly everyone who passes by tells her the same thing. "Don't let it boil, Mariuccia. Per carità, non farla bollire. For pity's sake, don't let it boil." Mariuccia goes jealously about the business of her infusion, all the while talking easily across the piazza to the polenta man, whose copper cauldron, black and battered, hangs, by virtue of a wrought-iron stand, over a pile of red and white ashes smouldering in a small circle of stones. A long white apron wraps his jeans, and only a U2 T-shirt keeps him against the late January afternoon, the thin cotton of it straining across his chest as he whips his savory pap with a broomstick, moving it always in the same direction. Stirring polenta counterclockwise is to flirt with calamity. Any Umbrian will assure you of that. "Polenta incatenata stasera," he tells Mariuccia. "Polenta in chains tonight." He points to a great bowl of white beans, which he'll fold into the cornmeal when it's thickened and smooth. Some fanciful eye in one past century or another must have thought that white beans running through the thick yellow pudding looked like a chain. How a thing happened matters less to an Umbrian than that the thing is preserved, and so polenta in chains the dish will always be. One side of the piazza is enclosed by a stone wall in which there is a low wooden door. Through the door and down half a flight of steep steps is a grotto, a large cave that has been transformed into a village kitchen, complete with generator and lights. A slab of marble resting on trestles serves as a work table, covered now in a storm of flour. Oil bubbles in 2 deep pans set over a wood-fired stove. Tonight the kitchen is the scene of mixing and rolling and frying of bread dough, all of it performed by women upholstered in the local uniform of flowered pinafore and shawl or sweater, accessorized for winter with stocking cap or woolen kerchief. These women live a few meters from the piazza, some of them inside apartments in the palazzi that sit directly on the square. But rather than cook alone, each one in her own place, they prefer to gather in the cave to prepare for village feasts, or to save a windfall of fruit, a bounty of tomatoes, to set their cheeses to age and the wine-washed haunches of their pigs to dry. And one senses that the kitchen serves some other, more sympathetic purpose, as a club or a bar or a card-room does for their men. 2 of the women enter the kitchen now, sharing the weight of a sack of flour. 2 others exit, each one holding her half of a wooden wine case filled with just fried flats of bread. Tortucce, they are called. A moment later, another woman exits the cave kitchen, her bread-piled wooden case balanced quaintly on her head. Swinging her prosperous hips through the crowd, an old blue sweater falling open, uncloaking Juno-esque bosoms, soft and brown and bursting over the confines of her dress, she raises cries of joy. One man bites the side of his finger, a gesture of desire, of admiration. "Ciao, bellezza! Ciao, Miranda, bella mia!" "Ciao, beauty. Ciao, Miranda, my lovely," shout the men. Miranda sets her load of bread down near the sausages, and then, to spur their collective amusement, she lifts one of the smaller men off his feet, promising him a death by grilling if he doesn't behave. Miranda is nearly 70, and the man she taunts is past 80. Both will tell you that they are younger now, that they are older, that a life lived well moves backward. Like the only way to stir polenta, this is another Umbrian truth. Truth number 2. And so Sant'Antonio's birthday supper is ready. The saint is the patron of this Umbrian village, and his presence and image are as familiar to these people as an endearing uncle. They live at ease with the hallowed as they do with one another, both relationships being mysteries which need no solution. And I begin to think that this must be Umbrian truth number 3. All the cooks come out from the cave kitchen now, wiping hands on aprons, buttoning sweaters, and wrapping shawls more tightly, joining in among the 100 or so people milling about the place in greeting and expectation. The few, like us, who've come from neighboring villages in both Umbria and Tuscany, are welcomed as guests, taken here and there about the piazza to meet the others. The air is charged. It's nearly time. There is suspense even in the light, as though old red satin had been stretched too tightly across the sky. The leaving sun pokes through the frays in it, causing a great hot splendor over the pageant, freezing it for a moment, and surely forever, like the squeeze of some antiquated camera or the strokes of a gold-dipped brush. The crowd seems made of children waiting for the doors to open upon a party. A church full of people looking for the bride. They wait for their saint and the fire that will honor him. But it's colder now without the sun, and the waiting begins to feel too long. Rescue comes from the back of the square. 3 men stride forward with faggots of twigs in their fists, holding them high like unsheathed swords. They are 3 generations of a family, a man flanked by his son and his father. Each of them is named Antonio. From the other direction, a small, bareheaded and purple-robed man appears, and, brandishing a burning torch, walks, smiling, toward the trio of Antonios. He is the bishop. Like altar boys, the men kneel on the cobbles of the pavement before him. The bishop kisses the tops of their bent heads, lights each of their faggots with the flame of his, and in a move swift, balletic, like discus-throwers in a sandy field, all 4 men heave their flames onto a great pyramid of wood. Trenchers of oak, split and drenched in benzene, piled one atop another. It is a totem, primitive and dreadful, that they set alight. 60 feet high it is, but higher still it seems, the flames licking now, gasping in a rampage up and over the oily black skin of the wood. The crowd sways in a primal thrall, and, save a sacrificial lamb or a pale-skinned virgin, the ritual flames are barely removed from those of the ancients. In a single brazen voice, they are a pagan tribe, saying psalms in the red smoke of St. Anthony's fire. They are reminding themselves, and one another, how small we all are in the scheme of the world. And this is Umbrian truth number 4. Ti piacciono, eh? You like them? Asked the baker of a man who is shamelessly ravishing of a lush, dripping package made of sausage and fried bread. Le ho arrostite io, says the baker. I roasted them. Ma io le ho preparate, but they were made by me, says the butcher. Ma guardate, ragazzi, sono io che ho ammazzato il maiale. But look, my fellows, it was I who killed the pig, said the farmer, whose boast causes a volley of backslaps and a reckless clinking of glasses. Like a reliquary in a shrine, there is a wheel of cheese set on a white-draped table and flanked by candles. Pecorino ignorante, someone calls it, ignorant pecorino. It is ewe's milk cheese made the old way, which means it was made by ignoring the state's newfangled sanitary laws. Bootleg pecorino it is, made by a shepherd the way cheese was meant to be made, says the shepherd who made it, tapping at the form with his knuckles, looking for a natural crack, like a sculptor seeking acquaintance with a stone. Why does one always expect a shepherd to be of a certain age, toothless and swathed in skins, a peaked hat pulled low on his brow? This one is perhaps 30, with eyes green and liquid as just-pressed oil set wide in his heart-shaped face. With his creamy turtleneck sweater and a fine pair of boots, he is a 6th-generation sheep farmer and cheesemaker who lives with his family in an 18th-century stone house surrounded by the moors and meadows where his herds graze. He rides a Harley, but leaves it in a shed on the edges of his land so as not to disturb his sheep. His cheese, this one a tobacco leaf-wrapped 3-kilo form that has been aged for 2 years in an heirloom terracotta urn, falls into bronze crumbles as he breaks its crust with a palette knife and small hammer. People wait in line for the cheese, each one holding a paper cup of black honey. One claims his piece and, before biting into it, drags the cheese through the honey, eats it then as though it were the only food in the world. Ignorant cheese indeed. Another table is set with 9 or 10 versions of an olive oil and orange blossom-scented cake. Each one looks and tastes just a little bit different from the others, according to the hand and the soul of the baker. Most people surrendering to politeness and greed taste all of them. Meanwhile, Mariuccia still hovers over her kettle, dosing it with cold wine at the first sign of a gurgle, and Miranda of the Bosoms tells the miracles of St. Anthony to a group of children who sob and choke in battle over the rights to a silver balloon. We'd learned about this festival of St. Anthony from signs, hand-wrought in bold bleeding script, fastened to every lamp-post and under every bridge along the lakeside road. Festa di Sant'Antonio Abate, 17 Gennaio. Did you see that sign? It's tonight. Tonight is Sant'Antonio. Would you like to go? I'd risked the question despite the downturned pitch of my husband's mouth, the bilious tint of his cheeks, the rhythmic slapping of his palms on the steering wheel. We were returning to San Casciano after another day dedicated and lost to the hunt for a house, the next house, as Barlozzo calls it. Over time, one becomes hardened to the dupe, the dazzle, the genteel hiss of scorn which can be symptoms of the business of buying and selling, or even of the renting, of something as subjective as walls and the space within them. But today was made of mockery. And so, when he didn't answer my question about St. Anthony, I stayed quiet. I understood that he was bent on putting immediate distance between his murderous thoughts and a certain red-bearded agent. Said agent had taken us to see what he'd called a country house in one of the communes that surround the gorgeous hill town of Todi. All the while we were in the auto with Redbeard, he'd rhapsodied about light, about the amazing softness of the light, and how it illuminated the house he was taking us to see, no matter the time of day. Luminosissima, the lightest of lights, he'd said as we approached the place. And so it was, unfettered as it was by much of a roof. Ah, yes, the roof. It has been arranged for. We are waiting only for the permessi, the permits, from the Comune, the city hall. You know very well that these things are not in our control, but we have been assured that the work can begin within another week. It will be finished in a matter of months. How many times have we heard the song of the permessi? How many times had our questions and perplexities been crushed by an agent's automatic absolution with his single mention of il comune? But in the meantime, look, there are an additional 2 rooms in the wine cellar, he'd said, pushing open the rotted door to a fetid cave piled with tools and pots, the dross of better days. I'd felt suddenly spent, wanting nothing more to do with Redbeard or permessi. And as for the grand concept of il comune, well, you will admit, signore, that it does provide the dream of all strangers, does it not? Redbeard had continued, to live under the Italian sun. He'd said this while plucking at the dried petals of a hortensia bush, even he, now too tired for the play. Thwarted and silent, he'd driven us back to the center of the town, unwinding a handsome green scarf from his neck as we went, an actor stepping out of costume. But Redbeard had provided only the day's finale. The scenes had begun at 8 that morning. The first stop was to keep an appointment to see un appartamento in affitto, centro storico di Todi, terzo piano di un palazzo prestigioso del Settecento, restaurato in modo pittoresco, an apartment for rent in the historic center of Todi. The third floor of a prestigious 17th century palace, restored picturesquely. Apart from the advertisement itself, we'd been besotted just stepping through the portone, the great door, into the courtyard of this address. A long dim hall, a fallow of broken marble, wine and russet columns, strewn everywhere, half supine and lustrous in the powdery light. Hearts racing, grinning to each other over our luck, we mount shallow steps. Barely touching the velvet cord banister, barely touching the steps themselves, which curve and careen 3 stories up to an abrupt end in front of a pair of great wooden doors, carved, beveled, corniced, the sheen of them the color of ripe black grapes. I stop to catch my breath. 2 brass Moors' heads are the door's knockers. I strike one sharply 3 times. I stand back to await entrance to my new home, smoothing my jacket, pulling my hat so it sits just above my eyebrows. Where's Fernando? Huffing, he rounds the final curve as the door is opened by Signor Luca from the estate agency. The bowing and handshaking take place in front of the door. Only the threshold rests between the sublime and the picturesque. Lowered ceilings, perfect plasterboard walls, pimpled milk-glass shades over high-wattage bulbs, and rubber baseboards are the stuff of the salone, all of it clinically strangled, vandalized of every Renaissance architectural and cultural trapping, motif, and sentiment. But surely it will get better, I tell myself. I know that the agent and my husband banter behind me, but I hear nothing save my own peevish growl. I open and then shut one hollow wooden door after another, at first quite slowly, then faster and faster until I've touched them all, until I've seen the butchering complete. The 6 bedrooms are postmodern cubes, each an 8-foot square. There are 2 baths with metal shower cabinets pressed against the Lilliputian facilities of a nursery school loo. The cherry on the cake is a factory-assembled kitchen plumped down in the dark corner behind a half-wall of embossed plastic. Dark yellow embossed plastic. Fernando, more polite than I in the face of most horrors, listens to a sheep-eyed Signor Luca reciting the apartment's potentials. We can rent rooms to foreign students who come to Todi to study the Italian language, he says, or to those who will attend music courses, or to paint and sculpt. Better yet, we can establish some sort of rapporto, euphemism for kickback, with the local theater management, who will send us actors and rock stars, technicians. Do we know how many lighting and sound engineers it takes to put on the humblest of shows? All we'd have to do is to keep our tariffs 1,000 lira or 2 under those of the cheapest hotel, and poof, it's done, he says, brandishing his arms and throwing back his head, as though lowering the baton on the Appassionata. That we are searching for an apartment for our personal use, that we have never breathed the tiniest word to him or anyone else about a desire to run a home for traveling cellist, has not been considered by Signor Luca. Out from a yet unnoticed cubicle that opens from a door set flush into one of the bedrooms steps this performance's second banana. He is Adolfo, and together these 2 are convinced to rent this place. This morning, to us or to any one of the 12, I've counted them, 12, other appointments printed in 22-point book antiqua on a page clipped to Luca's leather agenda. Fernando continues his obliging, feigned interest, his head cocked fetchingly in thought, unresponsive to my fierce pinching of his forearm. The cat and the fox want signatures, deposits, the repeated thumping of their notary's stamp on at least 300 pages of state-composed and printed and collated forms, which await only the addition of the renter's personal data. They want all this before lunch. I take Fernando's lead. I stop the pinching and my not-quite sotto voce repetitions of English, French, and Spanish oaths. I cock my head, too. If head-cocking will get us out of here faster than whispered oaths, I'll do it. All I want is to escape down those majestic stairs, through that splendid courtyard, and out into the crackling cold of the Umbrian winter. And then I'd like an espresso. We are seated in a cafe, our emptied cups pushed aside. I know that my husband is preparing himself for a quietly spoken tirade on cultural posture. Here, let me read the advertisement to you once again. In his vulpine voice he does so, and in the same tone he explains that each and every word is true. Is the apartment not in the historic center of Todi? Is it not housed on the 3rd floor of a prestigious 17th century palace? And since style is subjective, it could very possibly be accepted that the restoration of this space has been done in a picturesque fashion. Picturesque, as a term, does not promise that it will be picturesque to anyone but the restorer. That you are sickened by what they've done with the space does not mean that a ruse was thrust upon you. It's your expectations that have foiled you. Someone someday will come along and find that place absolutely satisfactory. Exterior architectural judgments are the domain of city planners, of the keepers of the patrimony. What an owner does inside his real property is of no concern to the town fathers. Abusive, abusive restorations apply only to the exterior of a palazzo. Not a single window frame, not the slope of a roof, not the height of a chimney, nothing exterior can be adjusted in the least evident or intrusive way. But the interior is a blank page, architecturally. If you will accept that as an absolute, house hunting in this part of the world will become easier for you. He finishes his discourse with a horizontal movement of his hands, as though he's pulling taffy, a sign that means there's nothing left to be said, least of all by me. I sit there, processing what I can of the speech, adding the bits and pieces of Italian real estate truths with which I'd made my peace long before this morning. Indeed, there is a far greater national coherence regarding real estate than any other sector of the Italian culture. It's the same everywhere in the country. One buys a ruin and restores it himself, or one rents a former ruin that someone lovingly, faithfully restored for himself, and now can't quite afford to live in, but is loath to let go of for good. But the properties that fall into the latter realm are almost always available only to the seasonal renter. It is rare, and becoming more so, to find an honorably restored place to rent long-term. The highest categories of apartments or townhouses or country houses or villas are rented in the summer season for a ransom, the ransom sliding only slightly south at other times of the year. Our experience this morning is a variation on the theme of what's available to rent long-term, not only in an Umbrian or Tuscan hill town, but all over Italy. But even Fernando's steady reason wears thin over the hours, dissolving, finally, with the January light. Redbeard had pocketed the last of the Venetian's indulgences. And so now he seethes, takes the curves faster than he might, reviling the peninsula whole, its population entire. I don't attempt comfort. He is Italian, and the day has gifted him all these wonderfully legitimate motives for agony. He will rage and curse in the privacy of his car, with me, his only audience. There is joy in sfogo, in unburdening, and he will have his, uninterrupted. Fernando had sauntered through the day's events, or so he wished all witnesses to believe, his bella figura, good image, showing not a wrinkle. I, however, had responded as I'd felt, inviting figurazia, bad image at every step. Fernando cares about how he is perceived. I care about how I feel. I know there will be at least one more palm slam on the steering wheel, and maybe there'll be time for another beseeching for vendetta, and then I wonder if he might not be ready for a bonfire and a roasted sausage. A cup of hot spiced wine, and so he was, and so did the fire and the food, Mariuccia's hot wine, the kindness of strangers, so did all of these work to soothe him. Once again Fernando is in love with his country, his countrymen. The bishop, divested of his official purple in favor of corduroy pants and down-filled vest, is calling for attention. The drawing of the winning ticket for the evening's prize is near. A wheelbarrow, a glossy black number, on loan for the evening from the ferramenta, the hardware store, is lined with a tablecloth, faded yellow and nicely ironed. It is precariously stacked with salami and prosciutto and cheese, necklaces of dried figs and bay leaves threaded on kitchen string, pomegranates, persimmons still on their leafless branches. Nests of homemade pasta wrapped in kitchen towels are leaned up against the dried kind in paper boxes. Breads, cakes, jam tarts, biscotti shed sugar over all of it, and there are jugs and jugs of house-made wine. Each item is a donation from a villager, his tariff for the evening. Additionally, the villagers each buy a raffle ticket, the price of which is 5,000 lire, about $2.50. The proceeds from the sale of the tickets are handed over to the village women, who use it as needed to fund the festival and, with what might remain from their thrift, to stage some other impromptu supper. I like that nothing in the wheelbarrow is separate from the other things, how the fruit lies on the unwrapped cheese, how the cakes totter as they will, the whole of it an artless study in abundance. Another study in abundance is the winner. He is a small round boy with great chestnut eyes and red blooms over his olive cheeks. He seems shy at first, pulling at his mother's hand, wanting her company as he goes to claim his prize. Noting his hesitation, the bishop steers the barrow to the boy, and the crowd screams its approval. The boy's brown-mittened hands take over the cart, and, after some consulting with his mother, he pushes it about the piazza. Having decided to distribute his riches to the crowd, he asks people to choose what they'd like. Sometimes the boy stops to tell someone how to cook a thing, how to slice it, what to serve with it. Often he rolls his eyes in delirium over his own descriptions and suggestions. Of his preening mother I ask his age. He will soon be 10. She is flustered and teary, pulling at her sweater, running a hand through the curls of her thick black hair. No one, least of all she, will talk about the circle of grace just closed by her son here in the small town in Umbria by the light of St. Anthony's fire. Inside the church hall there is dancing. An accordionist and a keyboardist, their stage a precariously shifting table skirted in red paper for the occasion, play with eyes tightly shut, the two of them singing different words. There is no room at the top for the trombonist, who slides and puffs below them. They play a kind of West Indian polka, and I want to dance. Fernando says all he needs to seal the day is to suffer my dancing. I tell him not to look. Mostly children and older women twirl and lope about soberly, risking some fillip now and then. The result, a shuffling sort of beguine. I stay at the edge of the dancers, waiting to be invited, but when no one beckons, I reach for the hand of a woman who, missing not a beat, pulls me into the troupe. I follow what they do for a while, then slowly begin to break off on my own. Then they follow what I'm doing, until we fall into laughing, pull ourselves together for a final twirl. I look for Fernando and see him outside the hall, leaning his elbows back against the side of a palazzo, his face arranged in a crooked smile. He is shaking his head in that I can't believe you'd do that, but I'm so happy you did sort of way. Then, through a Bogart crunch on his cigarette, he purses his lips in a kiss. I go out to stand next to him. He pulls me close and we stand and watch. I think how these people are as invigorated.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?